No coffee in the last hour. So we were good. We had a lot this morning though.
Are you in process of the drive right now?
So we had to come back and pick up our second car and kind of do a quick walkthrough of the house. So we're in Stamford at a hotel. Yeah. So
wow. Stamford Marriott, I know it well.
Yeah. So that sort of counts as in process of the drive, but it's only a little bit.
There you go.
Okay, we're set. We're live.
Okay, so it's 7:04. We'll call this meeting to order. I wanted to start by thanking everyone for continuing to call in. You know, everybody has a lot going on with personal lives and jobs, and the board certainly has taken the responsibilities seriously, and I really do appreciate that. One thing we'd like to start on these meetings going forward is if everybody could, as much as possible, could have their video on. These meetings become so impersonal as it is. It's so hard to really feel connected, and that just gets a little bit worse when we're not able to see each other. So we would ask that everybody do that, and appreciate also that you keep your mute on when you're not speaking, et cetera. So thanks for that. One piece of so that's that, and so then I'd like to move on to the agenda. So any citizens' comments? No.
Nope, it doesn't look like it.
So approval of the minutes from the October 13th meeting, if I could have a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thanks. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, all in favor? I'll assume that's everybody saying aye into their screens. Anybody have a nay on approval? Okay, so the minutes are approved. Molly, any correspondence?
Yes, I do have. I have one correspondence, which is a thank you note. Actually, if you look down to the motion to approve it, the money to cover rent for the next few months for one of our clients, she wrote us a thank you note just to say thanks for your amazing work for the people. Hope you have a peaceful day.
Oh, that was very nice of her. So moving on then to the treasurer's report, Andrea.
I'd just like to personally express my thanks and appreciation to Tony for your service as chair of the board, and you've done such an amazing job, and I wish you only happiness and success in your new chapter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
As far as the Sunshine Fund, we had a couple of contributions and a gift expenditure. So we have a balance of $60. And if anyone would like to make a voluntary contribution to the Sunshine Fund, they can do that by putting it in an envelope with your name on it and dropping it off at the Madison Youth and Family Service building. There's a drop box there. I'd like to make a motion to approve the following donation: $10,000 for COVID impact program from Neighbor to Neighbor, and $10,000 from Neighbor to Neighbor to be used as follows: $5,000 for the discretionary fund and $5,000 to cover rent for the next few months for our client who has cancer.
Can we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So Andrea, Scott, any comments on these donations?
I'd like to add, first of all, thanks to Neighbor. It's almost become a routine experience at the Board of Selectmen to take up an action item to accept a hefty donation from Neighbor to Neighbor, most of which over the last summer have gone to our COVID impact program, which to date has provided well over $50,000 worth of straight direct assistance to people that are dealing with this or have been managing some impact because of COVID. So it's just been a wonderful experience to have to show up to Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to as they read these into the minutes and vote in the donation. So it's really a testament to Madison Foundation and Neighbor to Neighbor. And the Board of Selectmen had mentioned that they would like Neighbor to Neighbor to come to a meeting, or at least virtually. And as of today, Lauren Ryan's reached out to me, and we do have them going on the agenda in the Board of Selectmen for December, I want to say 14th.
That sounds right.
Sound about right?
Yeah.
Which is one of those fun 8 o'clock Monday morning meetings that I'm sure Scott Murphy loves.
We're moving our Monday morning meetings to Tuesday, by the way, eventually. That is the new word on the street. So can't wait.
Oh dear God, that's going to make Tuesday a lot of fun.
What makes Monday allows us to ask questions, which is always a better thing. So.
Very true. Anyway, so I wanted to say, I wanted to mention that about Neighbor to Neighbor. They're just amazing. We're so lucky to have them. And the difference, if anyone's wondering, we have a discretionary fund through Neighbor to Neighbor that goes into our social services, so that as you see on the agenda, there is specific earmarked help for a person who's dealing with a very difficult situation. And the other funding goes into the general discretionary fund where, if there's a special need that comes up, that's usually something that has to do with housing or something that needs to get fixed in order for someone to stay in their house. And so we would apply that funding in those needs as they come up. So thanks, Neighbor to Neighbor.
Yeah, they have been incredible. So with that then, all in favor of accepting the donations as Andrea outlined? Say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. Moving then to the staff presentations. So Scott, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, so as many of you know, Aaron and Taylor, we lined them up for this month. And we did, like if you recall, last month we had Angela here talking about our clinical services. Both Aaron and Taylor represent a very big part of our clinical services in that they are primarily stationed at schools. Aaron at the high school, Taylor at Tolson. So they represent our school-based clinician role. Knowing that we're continuing to have our clinic work study going on, and certainly knowing as much as that's going on with the school as we go into this year with COVID sort of remaining over our heads, thought it would be a good idea to have them come back and just talk a little bit about what they see, what's going on, and give everyone a chance to ask them directly if there's questions or things that you'd like them to speak to. Both Aaron and Taylor are two of our long-running staff. They both have in common having interned here before attaining their positions, their full-time positions with us. And we're just really lucky to have them. They're both amazing at what they do. And with that, Aaron, you want to kick it off? Is Aaron in there somewhere? Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm here. Yeah.
Love these Zoom meetings.
I know. So I'm Erin. I have been at Youth Services for a little over 15 years. As I said last year at the meeting, that I started when John Michael Parker was a senior in high school. So that makes me feel kind of old. And so this year, obviously, it's been a bit of a different and a little crazy year. I am still, basically in a lot of ways, my job feels pretty much the same. I'm still seeing, around, 15 to 20 kids on a regular basis. And then I have a bunch of, kids who drop in periodically. it feels the same because, like that's, I'm in my office, the kids come to my office, they're just wearing masks. It's a little strange because I haven't seen many of my freshmen or new students' full faces before. So I don't really know what they look like, which is a little weird. I'm sure David feels the same way. I, on top of, the regular just seeing kids, I guess what's hard is that my kids are only in the high school. We're still on the hybrid method. So kids that I see are only there 2 to 3 days a week. So I have to try and figure out how to balance that. And it's often hard when like a kid's struggling and it's Tuesday and I'll say, well, come back Monday when the next day that you're in the building. And then on top of doing just regular counseling with kids, I also run GASP, which is the Gender and Sexualities program. And I, this year, ran that. Normally I stop that at the end of the school year, but we continued. So we have not actually, I think there's only been 1 week since the start of the pandemic that there wasn't a GASP meeting. And the kids have been really great. It's been a little bit hard to get the word out to, underclassmen that we're meeting, but we're starting to get some more people. I also present in the freshman health classes and do a gender and sexualities program. And that actually is coming up in the next couple of weeks, my first round of that. This year, there's been mental health is a big area of concern in the high school, in the schools in general. But so we're implementing, I'm sure you guys, a lot of you have maybe heard that they're implementing Wellness Wednesdays and some other things to help kids be able to connect. So one of the things that the school's doing that I'm part of is every day from 7 to 7:30 and from 2 to 2:30, there's a virtual drop-in that's staffed by a counselor. So each one of us has a different half hour. My half hour is on Fridays from 2 to 2:30. And that is a time kids just have to go into Google Classroom and put in support staff, and then they'll pop up on our screen. So we just started piloting that last week, so we haven't had a lot of business, but we're hoping as the word gets out, there will be more of that. I also,
Erin, I haven't heard of that. How is word getting out on that?
So TJ sent an email to this. He sent an email. I got it. It went out to the whole district last week on Friday.
The virtual session drop-in?
Yep.
I think it was mentioned at PTO today.
Yeah, I know Lindsay mentioned it at PTO today, there's also posters up in the hallways. There's posters outside every counselor's door listing who is at which time. Tomorrow's the first Wellness Wednesday, and they'll be doing, I won't be there tomorrow, but normally on a Wellness Wednesday when there is a group, I would be running one. And there's freshman groups tomorrow, so they'll be explaining who the counselors are. We created a video showing all the counselors and how to get to our offices that the freshmen will be seeing. And they'll also talk about the virtual sessions. So I'm sorry if you didn't see the email. I saw the email. I would assume it went out to everyone. It talked about Wellness Wednesdays and the virtual sessions.
Yeah, I may have missed the second half of it, the virtual sessions, but I think it's terrific that you guys are doing this. So.
Thanks. Right now it's sort of that we're just sitting there, hoping that someone comes.
I don't think the students know about it. It wasn't mentioned this morning in PTO, and maybe I missed it in the email. It's quite possible. But I don't think a lot of the students know that it's available, which would be great for them to know about.
Yeah. So again, the freshmen in cohort B will know tomorrow because they'll have a PAW group.
I think all the grades are actually having Wellness Wednesday tomorrow. not just
That's true.
freshmen.
Every grade will have Wellness Wednesday every week, but only the freshmen will have a paw group. Everyone else is just free.
Okay.
That's how
Maybe
Wellness Wednesday. What?
Could we get the virtual drop-in put into the announcements, you think?
We probably could do that.
And remember, and
Good idea.
announcements nowadays are really not done over the PA system. So, you know, you really have to go looking for these things a little bit. That's the only reason I even brought it up. I did find the notice. It's in TJ's email. It's in the conversation about Wellness Wednesdays, like you said. It's even in bold, so I shouldn't have missed it. But I think there was a lot of content in that email, so maybe a lot of staff don't know about it. So we just may need to respread the word a little bit stronger.
Right. And like last week, it didn't really, this is, again, last week was the first week, so it's new. So I think it'll take a little time for anything to get out. I talk to every freshman class every year. So the current seniors are the first freshmen that I talk to their health classes. And I've done it every year. Yet, and I go into other classes often and talk to people, yet there'll be kids who've been like, oh, I never knew that you existed. I didn't know that you worked. So like, we have to get the word out many times, because when I do that, I tell them who I am, where my office is. So, I think sometimes people say like people don't know, no one's telling people, but we are. Sometimes we just have to tell people like much more frequently.
It always takes a little while to get things off the ground, and that's fine. I think so. The feedback is it's great, and
get more.
We just need to keep promoting it and hope that kids take advantage of it. Aaron, is there? So I think well, let's have you both kind of present from your standpoint what you're doing and what's going on, and then we'd open it up for questions to both of you. That way, we kind of keep it a little organized. Is there anything else that you want to share as your as part of your report?
I'm like, I guess not. I don't know.
No, you can't. No, I cut you off. I just, if we're going to start getting into question and answer stuff, I want to make sure Taylor has a chance to do her presentation too before we got into that part. So, so go ahead.
I also carry a small caseload in the clinic, and I also I'm supervising 2 interns this year as well. So I've never had 2 interns before, so this is new. What else do I guess that's the basics of what my job entails.
Well, and you do community services in the in the summer.
In the summer, I run the community service program, which also looked very different this year than it has in past years. Because we couldn't do many of the things that we usually do, which was difficult. But we did a lot of other great things. We did a rock garden program where we put rock gardens in different places. We did a lot of beach cleanups. We raised over $1,000 for backpack supplies. We had a student create videos on how to use Zoom for the senior center that was sent out to seniors. So it wasn't the same, and it was a little disheartening in some ways, but we were able to do a lot of some things, not as many things as we probably, definitely not as many things as we would have wanted to, because in the past, Derek and I have had an activity pretty much every day for the summer, sometimes 2 in a day. So that made it a little bit tough. But and the other thing that I've been working on is myself and some of the school counselors, well, the school psychologist and the nurse have been working on a more official suicide risk protocol for the school. So hopefully that is something that will be approved. It's moved up, so hopefully that'll be something that is like on the books as a policy very shortly.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Taylor?
Yeah, hi everybody. So just as Aaron was talking about, it's been super busy at Polson too. I, like Aaron, carry about a 15 to 20 student caseload weekly, and I have students that I see in the outpatient clinic as well. And this year started off to a pretty big jumpstart. It's been, as Aaron could probably agree with, it's been probably nonstop in the mental health world of helping kids adjust through the different schedules of hybrid, full-time. I know for me, it's been a little bit easier on my end at Polson because I've had the opportunity to be there full-time, and the students have been able to be there full-time too. So that has helped me with my scheduling and seeing kids. But that still says that there's a lot of kids dropping by. I think the social isolation from COVID really impacted a lot of kids in how they socialized, how they view themselves, how they reach out to peers, how they access help with adults. A big trend that I'm noticing in the middle school level is depression. Depression comes up pretty frequently in my caseload or students that are stopping by. And that is along the spectrum of body image to like isolation, and even enough to, safety assessments that I've been conducting and working alongside with some of the support staff as well. And so a lot of my main goal too is like, how do we keep these kids safe, knowing that they're going to and from school, knowing that there's so many risk factors going on with COVID, social distancing, schoolwork, and maintaining that balance of, trying to cope with stress and also getting their schoolwork done. So it's been pretty busy. Typically in the throughout the whole school year, I've run the Who's Got the Power, not leadership, but Who's Got the Power anti-bullying program. And I do that in the health classes. And considering at the beginning of the school year that we had the hybrid schedule, I was only able to be in the health class one time to teach the lesson, which typically it's like a 3-part lesson. So this just goes to show how we really we were hybrid during the school day, but even some of our lessons were hybrid as well. So making sure that I got the message across about how their role as a bystander is and how they can become an ally and which adults they can come to at school for any support. That was really the main focus I wanted to get these kids to open up about. So I have Who's Got the Power that happens each trimester. I have been helping Peggy Butler and Katie Voles. I each did a training lesson with them in each of their peer helper groups to talk about, when the problem is too big. So giving the kids scenarios of, what is this problem that maybe a student will come to them with, and where do they go with it? Can they handle it themselves? Can they talk to another peer helper about it? Or do they need to come to me because this is something ASAP and we need to make sure that a student is okay? So we did a lot of that training, I want to say in the last month. And really, it's been a little bit more difficult on my end to get some programs going. It's a little bit slower, not wanting to mix the cohorts of kids. Normally, I'm a big lunch group kind of person, getting students with all abilities into a lunch group. Not all students, but certain students who might need a little extra help, getting them into some lunch groups. But without, wanting to combine cohorts, and we wanted to keep kids safe, it's been a little bit harder to do that. So yeah, groups are a little bit different for me at Polson this year. There's not as much time, but I am hoping, looking into, December to spring, or December at least, coming back January maybe, what we can do virtually, or maybe where we'll be COVID-wise, what we can do to provide kids connections with one another. That's been one thing. And Aaron had mentioned too, that they were working on a suicide safety protocol at Daniel Hand. And so I'm in a similar boat with our school psychologist, Teresa Davis, to kind of piggyback off of maybe what Daniel Hand is doing and implement a similar protocol with us so that all of us support staff at Polson are on the same page. And they had a PD day last Tuesday, and all teachers and support staff were QPR trained, which is suicide assessment trained. And that was, I think, really important given this time with mental health, recent tragic events in our own community. And so it's just something to be aware of and to make sure that we have the access to the knowledge that we can give to the kids. So it's been busy, but day by day.
So I'm going to cover some of the QPR stuff when I get to my director's report, but thank you for sharing that, Taylor. I can give people more details on that when we get there. Questions for Aaron or Taylor?
I was just curious what we're offering virtually. I understand that it's really hard to offer groups in person, but what are we doing if, our numbers are getting worse, we're getting emails home? What are we doing for support groups for kids in general if they want, or groups in general, if they want to do something virtually?
So for me at the high school, I don't generally run like counseling groups even without COVID. Most of the counselors at the high school don't, because it's really hard to do so at the high school, because it's kids all have to have the same free period to have a group. So when I first started, I would try it and kids would kind of be like, why am I in a group with this kid? So when we were virtual, I still met with all my kids virtually. I still have some kids who I meet with virtually. And GASP, so my GASP group meets virtually. The only time we met we've met twice in person to make some posters, but because I want everyone from any cohort to be able to come, we meet virtually.
Could we do the same thing for counseling groups after school?
I mean, we could. I mean, in the past,
confidentiality could also play into that, right, Aaron? When you're thinking about
confidentiality can also play into that, and also in the past, when groups in the high school have been tough, kids who want to be voluntarily in a group where they're disclosing their personal information to other kids that go to the high school has not always been something that kids have really wanted to do. Kids oftentimes want to be in a group that's not connected to the high school so that they can be more open. So I just know that when we've tried to run in-person groups in the past, it hasn't been something that kids have wanted to do, really. Not that we wouldn't offer it if people wanted to. I don't know if that's.
I understand that. It's hard with confidentiality and things like that. But I figure, if school gets closed down, then sports are closed down, then, kids might have more times on their hand. It's just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, and that's something. Go ahead, Taylor.
Well, I was just thinking too, Peggy Butler and I did start a group last fall, which we piloted. It was more of an inclusion, school climate kind of group, and just getting that started and off the ground in September and October was just really hard because we had just transitioned back to full time. And then as the mental health and safety component of the clinical work that I was doing, I just wasn't able to, we haven't gotten it started yet, but it just wasn't the time to get a new group going. And Peggy Butler had just started training with her peer helper students too. So it's a little bit more challenging this year to get groups up and running in the fall, just because of how much transition we were going through. But my hope is, like I was saying, in the winter to spring to get some groups going virtually. That's maybe not clinical based, but more school climate, more, inclusion, more leadership wise. My groups do start in the springtime. We do allies in the 6th grade group. So there's things that are popping up, but starting anything new in the fall was really difficult this year.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's something also we've been talking about at the high school about how to do Wellness Wednesdays when we're virtual. So offering different kinds of groups, again, kind of like what Taylor was saying, maybe a mindfulness group, not a specific counseling group, although it could turn into that as kids, the same kids might come frequently. But that's something that we've been talking about doing because we don't want Wellness Wednesdays to disappear if we do have to go virtual. But it's just something, let's see how the first in-person one goes. And then we'll work on the virtual plan.
I think we've been, looking where we have opportunities where kids sort of naturally group together. We could then maybe form a group from kids that are for whatever reason finding something in common, or
Right.
whether they have things in common, whether at school or in the community. The other thing, and I'm actually glad you brought this up, because all of our groups, which are not necessarily, clinical or counseling groups, they're what we refer to as positive youth development groups. So that's peer advocates, peer helpers, allies, things like that. Valor, which is the newer one, connected to MAID. And, Jake and Darian, maybe you can comment this in your student report. Those have continued to run and likely have taken on more of a supportive nature to them. So as the kids have, they become less, a means to produce something and more of a means of connection. And then, there's still work coming out of a lot of our groups, particularly in the training groups. But the kids are tending to use youth. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say kids. Youth are generally using those more just for their connected nature more than anything now than perhaps they've had in the past. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's really wonderful and necessary, as even though the school is open, I know that a lot of the kids were reporting today that after the letter that came out on Monday night that the school was not at full capacity. My kids don't go today, so I don't know, but I know a lot of parents are choosing not to send at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, I did want to say, I thought of this after when Taylor was talking, but the one of my interns also, she helps with Roots, and they're working on a stall talk, and she asked me today if it would be, if they could put the virtual counseling hours on the stall talk. So, and I said, absolutely, and sent her the list. So I'm not sure when that, I'm guessing they're working on the stall talk tomorrow when Roots meets. So hopefully it'll be out soon. I would imagine putting up stall talks will be a different kind of project than it usually is.
Can we send Stall Talk out virtually to students and somehow post it on the website? And then I also wanted to just ask you if you could walk me through the process of going in the morning or the afternoon in the drop-in group, so I understand how that's.
You go to Google Classroom and you type in support staff.
Okay.
And then hit.
If I do it right now, would it work even though there's no link, like there's no meeting?
I don't, you might work, but yeah, there would be no one to meet with you.
Is it a Google Meet?
It's a Google Meet, yeah.
Yeah, so you're just going in and starting a Google Meet from within Google Classroom, so you're logged in.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how you do it. And so again, it's new. We haven't had a lot of business. So the plan is, most likely many students would want to meet individually. So if we do get more than one student in the time, so each staff is assigned 1/2 hour. So that's their responsibility. But so say Jake, say you came, right? And you were talking to me, and then another student came. I could ask, Mrs. Fandela or another person if they could set up a meet to meet with that student, so that people have individual time. Or if like you were finishing up, I could say, hey, can you wait 5 minutes? And I can meet with, Joe, whoever, Joe's my like pretend name. But we have to see how it goes because we haven't had it happen yet.
Yeah. And then the only problem I could foresee is that, like someone comes in trying to get help or wanting to talk to someone and, like they can't be talked to.
Well, I don't think that, I guess that could happen, but what would happen was if you came in and we were talking and another student came in, I would say, hold on, let me get your name. And I would have another counselor send an email to them or call so that I'd say Mrs. Fandela or whoever else. I would ask Mrs. Fandela because her office is next to mine. And she would set up a meet with that person. But the hope is that it's during the time that all the counselors are there. It's just that one person is assigned to be like the primary person. And then if there's more than one student, then we would go to the next person.
Do you find that most students are like responsive to their emails that you guys are sending out?
No, but this would be, Jake, that we would say, hey, Mrs. Fandel is going to send you an email right now.
Okay.
You know, like not later. It would be like Mrs. Fandel is going to send you an email with a link right now
Momentarily.
so that she could meet with them. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because students are just not great with organizational skills.
Right. But I would hope that they knew that it was coming like
Yeah.
in the moment, you know, within the next 3 minutes or whatever.
You would hope.
And look, this adds another opportunity for
Right.
students. It just, I think the strategy really is a good one. Like how many different ways can we open up windows
Right.
and doors for people to walk through? And I think on the other end too, encouraging students to take advantage of this. Not just, I mean, I think everyone's agreeing here, the awareness has to come up front, but then I think, you know, some promotion and encouragement and empowerment for young people to, you know, because there's always that gap between maybe somebody who's struggling and they don't know where the resources are. Once they know where the resources are, you want to close that gap enough so they'll take advantage of them when they need them. And that's really what you both do really well is you just create as many opportunities as you can for kids to interact with you, to know you, and increase the chance that they'll reach out to you when they need it, or if they're getting referred because, you know, a teacher or a parent or someone is making them or compelling them somehow. Any other questions for Aaron and Taylor?
Jake, I also just wanted to say, as far as the stall talk,
It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
me?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Aaron,
so-
yeah, finish. I didn't even get the job. Go ahead.
As far as the stall talk, I can ask Melissa and Derek to put that out virtually. That's not my thing, but so I'm sure that they would.
Okay.
But
And then I actually just thought of one last thing is is there like a plan in place if a kid drops off the grid, like they're, you know, reaching out and then all of a sudden, you know, like they're not responsive to the email or they don't, you know, show up to the meeting or something like that happens where, you know, like the kid all of a sudden, you know, backs out. Is there like a scheduled thing where you're going to, you know, like call them out of a class and say, you know, like, can we talk and can we get this figured out? Or are you going to send a follow-up email?
so I'm not sure exactly. I mean, that's what we've always done. Like if ever I had a kid who just stopped coming, and same thing, that's what we did during distance learning. All the counselors and support staff have a meeting every week. We've had it since I started working there, where we talk about kids that we're concerned about. And so during distance learning, I mean, there were kids that I talked to on the phone there was kids I had Google Meets with every day during distance learning and kids I talked to on the phone every day during distance learning. So that's what we do, like reach out, you know, to parents. And there are some kids that it is hard when they drop off the grid. I mean, I know there are people that guidance counselors sent them emails, called their parents, you know, and if they don't get responses, it is really hard to figure out what to do next. But that is the plan, yes. After, you know, someone gets brought up at our SST meeting, which is our student support team meeting, and then we make a plan. Sometimes, you know, usually before someone gets brought up at student support team, there has to be contact with the parents, contact with the student. And then if after all those things have already happened, then they're a bigger concern and then we work on another plan. But yeah, that's always been the plan. You know, if a kid drops off, we don't just forget about them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With any other questions at this point?
Scott, so I just want to ask you, Aaron and Taylor, how are you guys doing? Like under normal circumstances, you have a very tough job, and knowing you as individuals and clinicians, you want to be able to do more, and there's only so many hours and so many times and opportunities throughout the day. There's a big demand. The numbers speak to that, right? How are you guys doing? How's your staff doing? Your coworkers?
So I mean, I'll let you two answer that if you'd like. I can give a general. It's up to. I'm trying to get an idea from you both. Looking at your faces. So look, so tell me if I'm wrong, but we're tired. And I don't think we're much different than anybody who are dealing with this. I mean, I think as you pointed out, if you're in a role as a helper, you're probably carrying a little bit more in terms of, you know, what you're hearing and what you're dealing with to help other people. So there's definitely a part of that. And, you know, what these two didn't talk about was their role in the recent community tragedy, you know, the death of Adam. And so our counselors have roles being a part of the teams, the crisis teams at the schools, and then really being a big part of what we refer to as grief response, and something that we've been a part of doing here for many, many years when they happen. So, you know, both Aaron and Taylor were upfront and central and how the schools, what they knew, what they were planning, how to arrange, you know, how to organize certain things, how to do outreach to whether it was groups of students or the student, you know, the family itself. So yeah, and you know, that's tough work and it's complicated and it's all step by step because you never make assumptions about what people want or need. So you sort of tiptoe and you make sure people know you're there. And you hope that when they need help or they're, you know, needing some guidance or resources, that they'll let you help them. Right. So, but I'd say thank you for asking. We're doing okay. We're hanging in. I think we do try to pay attention as much as we can to good self-care and supporting one another and taking days off as we need them as much as we can, which I have to sometimes actively pursue with these particular two people, because they don't always take days that they should. Tomorrow we're closed for Veterans Day. They often have the option to swap it out because the schools are open, even though the town is closed. And I understand that they're both taking the day off, and that's good. Would you two add anything or agree or disagree?
I would just say self-care. That's been the biggest part, I think, in general, given the climate of our world starting with COVID. So it's, you know, going back and having a lot of kids struggle and wanting to just be there and keep going is kind of like just the mindset, but knowing that you need to slow down. And, you know, we can't take care of other kids if we aren't taking care of ourselves. So Scott said it exactly.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah,
Aaron?
I would agree. I mean, it's a lot. There's been a lot of extra hours. I'm very tired, and, you know, I have my own kid that I have to remember sometimes, and she'll sometimes remind me, like, when will you be available to me? She'll say, and that's sort of when I need to know that I need to take a step back, because she needs me probably more than the other kids do.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. All right, so we'll move on. I'll kick it back to Tony so we can move into the rest of the agenda.
Yes,
got a few more things to get to.
Yeah, sorry. So thank you both, and especially on a night before you're going to take a day off. We appreciate it after all these long hours. Moving to the student discussion, student report. Jake?
Darren, you want to start with the Wellness Wednesday?
Yep. So Wellness Wednesday, just an overview, is every Wednesday there's going to be a new 30-minute period designated for Wellness Wednesday. Each grade level will have one Wednesday a month where a PAW group is held. And these PAW groups will have support staff, and they'll be able to do activities or introductions to support and encourage mental health. Meanwhile, the other 3 grades can use the time as they please. If you're online, you can log off, relax, you can get dressed, take a shower, make breakfast, whatever. If you're in school, you'll still be able to relax in the cafe or the library, maybe get some breakfast. And you also have the ability to meet with teachers about work. But students are also encouraged to create a bond with teachers by talking with, you know, stuff about life, not necessarily schoolwork. And so far, all my peers that have heard about it have loved the idea, and we're hoping to see it in action tomorrow.
Yeah, so basically the only thing is that if you're online and you're in the same grade, you aren't like you're not having a PAR. It's only when you're in school in the designated grade. So tomorrow is freshman, I believe. Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so basically cohort B freshmen, class of 2024, are the only people tomorrow that are actually getting talked to by the support staff. And then it's set up in a manner where hopefully this is going to continue, even if we go all online, even if we go all back to school eventually, hopefully we can keep this going, because I think it's actually going to be a really good thing. I'm excited to see where it goes. Mr. Solitary said he's open, changing it up as it comes, being adaptable, which is really important. I know Mr. Becker, who's the new foods and nutrition teacher, said that one of the things he's going to be doing during this time is he's going to be making fresh bread in the foods and nutrition room, and he's going to be offering it to students. Mr. Tomaso, who is one of the CTE teachers, is going to be having his door open, and he has like a financial, like stimulation game where it's like you kind of like see where things go. I think something to do with the stock market, maybe. I'm not really sure. And then Mr. Solitary also said that Mr. Amenta, who is another CTE teacher, will actually have a car up on the jack in the room that he works. And they're going to be able to see how a car works from the underside of it. So I think it's going to be a cool opportunity for kids to kind of just see, maybe, like learn a little bit more about what they're actually interested in and talk to teachers about things they have in common. So it's going to be a cool thing, hopefully. And as the warmer weather comes, they're looking to try to have staff available on the turf too, so kids can just go sit on the turf, which I think is really awesome, and walk the track and stuff. The next thing is I actually met with Miss Smith, who's one of the school psychologists. And I basically just had a conversation with her because after Adam's passing, she was the PAW teacher designated for my group. And she just kind of wanted to get a chance to talk to me because after the meeting, she found out that I was the MYFS board rep. So we just wanted to have a further discussion. I told her that I thought there was a need for the support staff to be a little more visually present. I recommended usage of a video to introduce each member of the staff, why they love doing what they do, and what they can do, what they can help with, and what exactly their job is. I stressed that I don't think many students in the school actually know what a school psychologist is, what a school social worker is. So it'd be, kind of like a learning piece there for kids to get a chance to see what they are actually, offering and what they can help with. I also recommended visits to the student body during lunch and free periods in the cafeteria, just to introduce themselves to students and become more personable. I also recommended usage of words like youth and young adult to make kids want to open up more and feel respected and equal intellectual wise in the conversation. That's really important, I think. And we kind of had a small little conversation about microaggressions and how, we focus on some microaggressions with regards to racism and homophobia, but we don't always talk about it in regards to, ageism and, talking down to a youth. And Scott earlier corrected himself. He said kids, and then he said, young adults or youth. And, like it's stuff like that that makes kids actually engage in the conversation and feel like you're talking to them as a person and not as a child. So thank you, Scott. And then I was also told by her of a website being made by the support staff, kind of similar to Enlighten. I don't know if you guys took a chance to look at Enlighten last time, but it was basically kind of like the same premise of it, with just having like different coping skills available. They kind of picked the resources for this one, and it was a little different, like it was geared more towards the general population, addressing all facets of the student body, while Enlighten, I think, is kind of more geared towards, people who are really struggling. So it was more focused on, like how to relieve stress with like coloring and stuff like that. It was more basic. But, hopefully they can get that up and running soon. She said that was probably one of the things they're going to focus on next. And then I also introduced Enlighten to her. She checked out the website while I was there with her. She was very impressed. I was very appreciative. I'm very much so appreciated the fact that she was, complimenting the work that we did, and commending us on doing it. And we also created a plan for her to come to Unity Club so that I could introduce her to my club and she could see the different passion projects we're working on, see what kids are interested in at the moment. And I told her to reach out to me if there's anything I could help with. So any questions on that before we move on? Okay.
I'm not sure if people know that Enlighten's a separate group than Madison Youth Services or the high school, that the kids have put together a website and an Instagram page, as well as speakers of local community mental health professionals that are willing to virtually lend their time to create lectures that we're going to be posting on an Instagram and web page that showcase grief, anxiety, COVID release, eating disorders, dating violence, a whole bunch of different issues that will be just highlighting local therapists that they could reach out to and local programs.
So the hope is, obviously Dr. Calfano, David Myers, I think is someone that we're going to reach out to at some point. Who is the woman?
Dana Schneider, Renee McIntyre, Walden and Guilford for eating disorders. They have a pretty impressive list of very well-known therapists in the community.
My mom's going to speak on DBT, I think, and substance abuse counseling, because she has, degrees in that. She loves doing that. So we're just trying to catch, all these different people in,
Again, it's just for high school students. It's geared for high school.
Yeah, we just want to have a specified focus on these kids because, it's one of the biggest problems I see right now with the school is that we kind of get grouped together as like the district students as a whole. Like all the decisions being made are kind of like, okay, we're going to get shields for the entire district. We're going to get, lanyards for the entire district, whiteboards for the entire district. And that's kind of one of the problems I think that we kind of run into is just that there's different needs for each student group. Different age groups require different things. And I think this is going to be a good way for us to really target the mental health of high schoolers and really make them feel like, it's specifically geared towards you. It's here for you. So feel free to use it if you want it. The next thing is the senior picnic. I am thrilled to say that it actually went really well. It was a really positive experience. I actually told Mr. Solitary, I sent him an email the day of, I said, I thought this was really awesome. I'm so glad that we did this. Thank you so much. My peers were all very content with the modified version, and pretty much the only modification really was that it was cohorted and there was masks while we were inside and while we were all grouped together, and we just socially distanced a little bit, but it was pretty much as close to normal as possible. And basically what it entailed was just the senior picture inside the gym that they normally do, just a little socially distant. We still had the senior picture under the bridge. We were all grouped together, but we still had masks on. And then from there, we ran from under the bridge to the baseball field, which is where they have it every year. And then when we got to the baseball field, they had hot dogs, hamburgers, cookies, chips, ice cream truck, DJ, yearbook and Tiger Talk staff, and a lot of blue paint. And there was beautiful weather. It was actually better weather than like 3 weeks prior, which was one of the biggest concerns we had, but it ended up working out pretty well. And the staff was just very understanding. They just kind of like let us do whatever and have fun. And everyone was just really glad that we had that experience, because I think that was one that we all kind of were missing out on. And I think it really did fill the void. And the only really like part that didn't really hit home was just the wake up call in the morning, which is, usually the seniors just run through the halls screaming like banshees. But this year it was just the band walked by the building on the sidewalk. It was just kind of, but what are you going to do? The picnic is more important. So priorities.
At least a little taste of normal, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was good. And then just a quick little update on Valor. We actually are putting together an intro video. We've been kind of slow to start. We've all been at different spots, but kind of all are on the same page now. We had a meeting without Crystal and Catherine. We did some filming. The only people who didn't get their filming done was Crystal and Catherine and one other member. So we have pretty much everything done with the video, and they were going to do their parts today, they said, and the one other person said they're going to do today. So hopefully we'll have a video out by the end of the week. And the plan is to just unveil the video and spread the word about who we are and get going on a project. And then Darian's going to do the COVID situation, and then I'll wrap it up with mental health.
So obviously cases have been going up in the state and now in our community. The superintendent's last email showed 18 members of the DHHS community that are quarantined due to contact tracing. And obviously rumors have been floating around the school about confirmed cases, like who are they around during the weekend and stuff like that. Many parents and students have been transferring to online learning. Like I'm personally staying home for the week just because my grandparents are in town and I'm not risking them getting sick. So the general vibe we're getting in the school is that students think that we'll be out, and some teachers think that we'll be out at the latest by like Thanksgiving, but there's nothing official on that. That's just like what kids are thinking. Many teachers are out due to contact tracing, which makes it difficult for them to teach, but the students are well aware that it's difficult for them to teach from home and that they're doing their best to keep it normal. So with these teachers being out, there's obviously a lot of covering that needs to be done, and we have a couple of substitutes that are doing that, but it has been a little bit hectic at times getting teachers from other departments to help cover, but they have been doing a good job with that. And winter sports have been postponed as of right now, and students have also been concerned about exams because obviously last trimester we didn't have exams, and for the second and third trimester last year we didn't have exams due to online learning. And so far we don't have a lot of answers. Mr. Salutary said there was a meeting last Thursday regarding exams, and that hopefully he will have a message by Friday regarding exams.
I just want to clarify something. It's not that you're having trouble getting teachers to cover classes. Teachers are being asked to cover classes, and teachers are covering classes every time they're asked to. I like on a day like today, I worked every hour of every day, either covering a class or teaching my own classes. So it's just that there aren't enough teachers and enough human beings to cover the classes that are vacant, because I have to teach my own classes as well. So there's a substitute shortage. We're trying to hire teachers. We can't find teachers to substitute. So when that happens, then there's no choice but to cancel a class. But it's not because there's anybody saying that they're not willing to cover a class. It's physically because they're already covering classes.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only imagine how tough it is. Like that must be really hard having to cover literally in work every single period. And I mean, part of your job as a teacher is being available for, extra help when kids need it and stuff. And like, you do have responsibilities with like the math lab, and I'd imagine you're not able to fulfill them if you're, filling in all these different periods and stuff. Like, it's just like why I think that teachers need a break, and I think kids need to be able to access the teachers that they know. And I think that it's a really big problem that's kind of arising. And I think a lot of teachers are also conveying the message that if we're going to be, out of school soon, it's not because of, how many kids are getting sick. It's because of the amount of teachers that are going home because they're contact tracing and just, coming into contact with COVID.
It's a good point.
Darren, during the end of last year, there was concern about how much the students were learning, right? Because there was certainly a lot, everybody was trying to figure out what to do. So as we, now we're in November, what's your feeling? What's the students' feeling? Do they think that they're learning, or are they really getting frustrated and about how things are going?
So obviously, I would say most students would say that in-school learning and being with the teacher is definitely easier. But compared to last year's online learning, I think the teachers have done a great job adjusting, and they've come up with a great system over the summer to help the students, be involved and answer questions. They've set up online like math labs and stuff like that, where when the teachers do have free periods, they can just go into a Zoom and talk to their teachers about any problems they have. So it's not like the help is unavailable for the students. I think they've actually done a really good job adjusting to it.
I think
Thanks.
they're finally getting the hang on it too. I think, one of the biggest problems that teachers were facing was that it was kind of hard to get online students to engage and be able to actually hear the students in the class too, because the microphone for the computers, like it's close to the teacher. So it's really focused on having the teacher talk and the students hear from that. But Mr. Salutary just told us last time that there was a actual order that went out and they got different speakers that hook up to your computer port thing, CPU tower. Gotcha. And it basically is just like it's a better speaker. It allows for kids to actually hear what's going on in the classroom a little more. So I think as problems are kind of arising, we're kind of being able to adapt a little better and figure out what's working, what's not. I know I talked to Miss Tibbetts, who I don't know if you guys remember, but I really was commending and talking her up last year and telling the school to model things off of the way she was doing them because I thought she was doing an excellent job. And she actually told me that she did have some struggles this year with the hybrid model because she didn't really have a great way of including, both populations of students online and in person, and it was just kind of hard to keep them able to see the lesson and stuff because like it's tough when you're not able to show like when you're doing a document, like you have to put everything on the smart board and share your screen, or you have to do everything on the whiteboard and hope that the people online can kind of see what you're doing. I mean, it's tough, when you're writing in a certain color marker, kids online can't see it and the kids in person are able to see it fine. When you're doing the smart board stuff, the smart boards are really temperamental and they don't always work. So it's tough when your technology isn't working with you and everything's kind of going wrong. So I really do commend teachers for all the hard work that they're putting in and really trying to adapt as best as possible to everything that's going on because it is really tough to adjust to a teaching environment like this, I'd imagine. So it is something that we really want to do is just commend our teachers for what they do and stress that it's working better. You guys are doing a better job and we're grateful for the job that you're doing. So if you guys don't have any questions, I can move on to mental health.
Yep, move on.
Okay. So mental health. I have personal experience with multiple people verbally admitting to deteriorating mental health. I'm seeing firsthand that some students are expressing suicidality, to which I immediately ensured that parents were involved and a professional health plan was established. There's a lot of relationship turmoil going on right now. There's a lot of couples that are ending relationships and it's not in a good way. And it's creating an even more toxic cycle of pain. Like this whole friends with benefits thing is not working out too well. The stress levels are really going up. They're skyrocketing right now. We kind of had a break last week with, like the senior picnic and stuff. Things kind of were chill and we had a second to just breathe and catch up and just have fun and relax, which was awesome. But it just also, when you go from that back to jumping into school, there's a lot of stress involved because it's just everything's catching up to you. It's just all that weight is just thrown right back on. The majority of students have less immediate stressors from college. The early action, early decision deadline was mostly November 1st. And I think the last one is in 5 days. I think it's like November 1st, 5th, 10th, 15th. So the majority of kids who are doing early action, early decision, they're squared away with their stuff, but the next round comes in January where it's like January 1st, like the 10th, 20th, something like that. So that's going to be an important thing to kind of monitor again. I think the school did a really good job with making sure that the college levels of, stress was managed with students with, like adjusting the workload and stuff. I think that was really awesome how they did that. And I think the next crucial part is to follow through with it when the regular decision stuff happens too, because it's going to be, honestly, I think even more stress. Most students only apply to like four schools tops for early action decision, because you can only do so many schools if they have, early action, because most of them, you can only do early decision to one school. And then restrictive early action actually means you can only do early decision, early action to one school. So, like it's really, you can only do X amount. And then the regular decision ones are where, you have all the schools that you're able to apply to. So, some kids, that's as many as 12 schools they need to apply to in January. Other kids, it'll be 3. So everyone's at different spots. So it's just going to be important to monitor that and adjust things again. Stress over COVID is also going up like crazy. There's rumors flying around everywhere about who has COVID, what teachers have COVID, what teachers are out because they don't have COVID, what students are out because they don't have COVID. I had like 6 people ask me today if I had COVID because I stayed home. And I was like, no, I don't have COVID. But the school is like really, like the general vibe is that COVID's all over the place in the school. So a lot of my friends with doctor parents are keeping their kids at home. So there's a lot of, just like overall distress about the thought of quarantining again, because that was not fun and kids definitely don't want to do that. But it's in the foreseeable future, unfortunately. And the overall political scene has actually been more positive than previously thought. I would have imagined that kids would have been hurtling themselves across desks at each other from, the conversations I was hearing. But I was pleased to see that was not the case. Teachers are refraining from a lot of the conversations involving politics, and students who are engaging in the politics and starting conversations, for the most part, are just being asked to stop because it's just a very polarizing topic and it's not great to talk about in the class. So back to like what people are like not to talk about with a stranger or friends, it's just probably should avoid politics. We're trying to keep that in the school environment too. And then standardized testing is resumed. I know a lot of you guys probably heard about SAT and ACT.
Yeah, Jake, probably but probably just another 2 or 3 minutes. Okay.
Yep, this is like the last thing.
Okay.
Standardized testing's back, and I know like a lot of people are seeing that it's optional. So kids are probably not going to be doing it, but they are because everyone gets to kind of feel that it's optional. So everyone's still doing that, and it's kind of a stressful thing too. It's just having to do that, study for that along with school, and just an early morning Saturday, not fun. So stress is up, and there is a lot of mental health stuff going on. We're hopeful that Wellness Wednesdays are going to be helpful. We're hopeful that the student support team is going to be more seen by the student body, both in like cafeteria visits, library visits, bridge visits, just getting to know these people and seeing what they are, what they do, and just kind of having that relationship form, I think is going to be important. And then I did tell Derek and Melissa too that I'm seeing a lot of eating disorders, unfortunately. I think it's extremely prevalent in the high school. I think a lot of girls have struggled with it for sure. And I think the survey data backs that up. And I think a lot of boys are actually using it too to curb their appetites, using nicotine. I think that's a really big thing. I've seen a couple of kids who have had, really drastic weight loss. And, it's almost like you see them one day and, you're like, oh, that's, same person I've seen since, like 4th grade. And then all of a sudden you see him another time and you're like, holy shit, they just lost 30 pounds. So, it's kind of eye-opening and startling to see, which is kind of, hard to witness at the same time, because it's just like, wow, that person's really struggling right now, and I didn't even see it happening. So I'm hoping that, we can do some work for mental health, do some work for eating disorders. And I told Derek and Melissa, I was told that they actually had a couple peer advocate meetings after the Adam thing too, which is good. And I think actually last time they kind of left the call and let students kind of talk about what they wanted to talk about with each other. I don't really know how that worked out. I had an essay due, so I couldn't go, but yeah. And then Tony, we just wanted to say thank you for being on the board and, all the stuff that you've done. Scott really told me that, you've been a really important part of all the stuff that we do and a really strong advocate for MYFS to a party that doesn't really think that funding is always necessary. So
in their defense, it's not true. So, but you're welcome, and thank you for that. That's very nice of you to say.
Tony, do we have time for me to ask a question, or are we out of time?
Yeah, yeah. So sure, maybe just one or two questions, and then we'll move on to Scott.
Super quickly, COVID's created this whole world of problems, but I noticed we haven't talked about vaping very much at all in the past 8 months. I'm wondering if you've noticed the four of you, actually, Taylor, Aaron, Jake, and Darian, if you've noticed a decrease in vaping amongst your peers. And super quick answers.
So are you looking for nicotine, marijuana, or?
Yeah, I would say any vaping.
So I actually haven't heard of a single person getting caught with marijuana in school. A single person. I haven't heard of a single ISS, anything like that. I actually haven't heard of anyone also getting caught for nicotine either, which I think is kind of interesting.
There have been people caught for nicotine, but not marijuana.
Yeah. So in the nicotine, if you get caught with nicotine, it's really just a slap on the wrist. It's nothing.
It's a 1-day in-school suspension. It's
nothing big. So, and that doesn't even go on your record. So I think there is a general decrease in it for sure. I would imagine. I think substantially less kids are vaping marijuana. I think that really did go down as a result of all the studies being released and stuff. I think kids were kind of just like, it's really not safe anymore. I think also there's just not really as good of a accessibility to it too. I think the dispensaries actually stopped selling the cartridges. I think some of them did stop selling the cartridges because of all the studies coming out. And I think the FDA might have actually said something about that. I'm not really sure, but I've definitely heard less people doing that. If people are, going to be using marijuana, they're going to be using, actual marijuana. But there are some kids who have been using cigarettes, which is kind of nasty and gross.
Does that answer your question, David?
It does. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Dip too.
Yep. Okay. So go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was just going to really move it on to the director's report, and thanks both students for the report. But to move it on to you.
And you had really lined me up nicely a couple of times in your report as you were wrapping up, Jake. But then you went on. So now I have to go back. You were talking about politics, and nobody should ever talk about politics ever. At least let's take a break for a couple of weeks. On that note, we have to congratulate John Michael Parker for his election win and becoming our state representative. And I had the absolute pleasure to talk to him this morning, and talking about what does this mean for his role on the board. And it's interesting because I wasn't exactly sure. If it's always understood that if somebody has elected office, they shouldn't serve on a town or civic board. I wasn't sure if that was like rule, if that's in the town charter or not. So I did check on that, and I did come to find out that it's not prohibited in the town charter. It is a precedent that they do try to hold to, and it's actually more part of what is more of a state statute, in that state representatives aren't supposed to themselves represent themselves in different and various other boards. So it's not a town thing. It's more kind of being consistent with a state expectation. But with that said, congratulations to JMP. And unfortunately, he's going to be stepping down, or will at some point be stepping down from the board. He doesn't get sworn in until January, so it's really up to him if he wants to continue with his Fanny in our seat for a little bit longer. And certainly we'll be happy to have him here for as long as he can hang in. Do you want to say anything, John?
I'll just say really quickly, thank you for that, Scott. And you folks all know how to reach me. I hope you still have my email address on my phone. And as someone that has benefited as a young person from Youth and Family Services and has been really honored to get to serve in this position, I hope you folks know that I'll be in your corner. And after talking to Scott, I think that stepping down from this position is the right next step. So you can always reach me, and I look forward to getting to continue to advocate for the work that this organization does and the vision we share for young people and families here in our town. Thank you, everybody, for getting out and voting. What an incredible turnout we saw in this election. And I think everyone is so happy to move into the next chapter. So I'm looking forward to that too. And it's been a privilege getting to serve on the board with you all. This may be my last meeting. I may get to stick it out till December. We'll kind of see how the process works for getting someone new appointed. I'm just inspired by you all and your work. And thank you, Tony, for your service. And we're going to miss you. And I'll look forward to keeping in touch with everybody else. Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Thank you. And we will have some nice things to say about Tony at the tail end of our meeting, whether he likes it or not. For the remainder of my time, and I'm going to try to make this as brief as I can. I'm aware that we're getting on a little bit in our meeting. So I'm attempting to screen share. Let's see if that's going to work really well. All right, can everyone see the Mental Health Matters outline?
Yes.
All right. Whew. So, there's been an emphasis on mental health. This has really been my attempt, this short little document, my attempt to start putting some organization around what we're trying to do. And I have to tell you, this has been really, really challenging, because it's in part what we're trying to move the needle on in the prevention efforts, some of which we control, and that, it's coming from our programming and things that we know we can do with our resources. And a fair amount of it has to rely on other resources, so our students talked about Enlighten. Sarah shared quite a bit of information on how it's forming. So groups like that are great. And as they sort of grow, organically from students and they're student-led, that's really what we want to have happen. And, as much as, we as Madison Youth and Family Services would like, to say that, it's something that we have a bigger hand in, it's actually better for us to be able to say that this is growing because we have such a great community and we have so many things that help to foster these types of groups to happen. And the kids themselves are we're lucky to have them, and they're amazing. So, I tried to put together, or I did put together this outline. There's no really timeline or dates attached to this. It's really a work in progress. And I was even updating this. This is revised as of today. So as I started with a base outline, and then, I've been adding things as we've been doing them so far. So just to kind of hit some points here, in terms of our prevention and awareness, there's a focus into the community that's towards the adults and parents. So we're going to reach them through, and many of you that are on our Facebook page, you're likely seeing a Mental Health Matters post once or twice a week. And so we're creating content, we're pulling content from other people and helping to drive that through Facebook. We've already taken some steps to help further develop our webpage as more of a clearinghouse and driving people back there. That's a work in progress. We've made some steps. We have to continue to work on that. And we've had ideas for different webinars. And this is going to wind up being determined by the amount of resources we have, quite frankly. I'll touch on QPR in a second. We've had some ideas about creating some panel discussions, so some dialogue-based webinars that hopefully would involve students. So we could have a student adult panel and things like tips and guidance on tough discussions between youth and parents, coping, of course, and substance abuse trends. So you guys touched on that. I'm not convinced that vaping is going down, and only anecdotally I can tell you for kids that are struggling to cope, I'm aware where it's, use is more problematic, quite frankly. Yes, it is true that the FDA has cracked down on some of the promotion that nicotine products can do, but pot's legal in Massachusetts. It's readily available on the internet, and they just keep coming up with new and wonderful ways for kids to vape and hide it. So I think we're going to find out a lot more when things get back to normal in terms of what was going on during this time. We want to do more QPR training, so let me hit the highlights on that. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. It's not so much of an assessment protocol as it is, and it's not a treatment. It's a very simple, basic approach to intervening, engaging somebody who may be in distress. And where CPR is understood as an emergency management technique, and it's very simple for what CPR stands for, QPR is in that same vein. So it's question, get the question out there, persuade, so that's to try to work with somebody towards accessing help, and refer, and that's the piece where you're trying to work to connect someone who's in distress with a helper, like a health professional. That could also mean a parent on the way to getting a health professional. Why QPR is really important. It's simple, it's clear, and it does a couple of things that we think is incredibly important. One, it sort of breaches that myth that talking about suicide to somebody makes them suicidal. That's not true. In fact, by bringing up suicide with somebody who may be suicidal, you're bridging a gap where maybe they didn't feel like they could talk about it, or they were going in the wrong direction in that way. It helps to kind of get that conversation going. The other part is it really speaks to the point of connecting somebody. So it's utilizing a relationship, whether it's a peer-to-peer relationship or an adult to youth relationship, that uses that relationship to get somebody to help. So it's sort of breaking that isolation that someone might be in. So it's a quick training, and it's one that's really aimed in a way that helps to breach that gap between somebody who's maybe going down a very unhealthy path. And one of the best things that I like about it is, while it's about preventing suicide, it really is about empowering and promoting for people to reach out to somebody who's in distress. It's noticing those signs and encouraging and being and creating the willingness of somebody to act. So when it comes to QPR, we have 2 people that we are trained as trainers. We're going to be training one more as a trainer, and then likely in the coming months, depending on our funding, we'll look at maybe 1 or 2 more staff to get trained. We want to do trainings for youth. We want to do trainings that we can put out in the community for adults in different groups. And this will be something that we unfold as the year goes on. Probably the biggest substantial development we've made, at least in this past week, so between Catherine and Melissa, we're trying to figure out how we can kind of get our youth groups more part of this. And we're going to be targeting probably about maybe 10 to 12 youth that are involved in our programs, and train a core group of students that we will refer to as ambassadors, because why not ambassadors? But so like there'll be youth that are trained, and they will go with us as we start to figure out how we can train. If we can train every high school, every middle schooler, that would be our goal. We have to figure out how. So that may involve discussions with the school and how we maybe can do this during the school day, or if that's not realistic, then we'll try to get that available to people in the community. that's the skinny on QPR, and you all can ask more questions about that later on if you want. So back to overall, our mental health matters. So the community awareness campaign part of it, we're trying to get the word out into the community through our different sources, and also trying to engage youth, as I was just talking about. We'd like to see PSAs going out, whether that's all talk and things that, again, that we control, or just adding a mental health component wherever we can. The school's already taking great steps on this with the Wellness Wednesday and some of the other things that they're doing. So while it's on this outline, we don't necessarily own that part. On the intervention side, as Jake alluded to, I think we all know, we're very concerned about the trends around mental health. So for us, it's just making sure that we have capacity, and if we wind up with a waiting list for referrals, just where are we going to go with those referrals? So a short list of other providers. So if we can't serve the need that's coming in, to know where we're going with it. And we're pretty good in that area, and we do have a number of mental health resources up and down the shoreline. Some are, more accessible than others, but that's just something that we're going to have to continue to work on. And we'll continue to develop this outline. I think this was the best way that I could try to help you all see what exactly we're doing. And when you hear mental health matters, that refers to this. This is, honestly, this is our year. This is it. It's all going to be about mental health and everything that sort of ties into mental health. And there's just no way around it, based on what we're dealing with. Any questions on mental health matters? That was like the best outline you all have seen in a very long time. I'm just right. You're all like, yes.
It was. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I do want to mention the town, our town department heads today did have a meeting in response to a known town employee who was COVID positive. And so, there were, this seems to be going on everywhere. And I think, again, the students had mentioned, there are rumors flying around. I just want to say this. I know, at least in the circles that I'm privy to, nobody wants to go back. So I think everybody's exhausting every opportunity they have to keep things open and operating as they are. The best thing that we can do now is take advantage of the things that we know for precautions, wearing masks, social distancing, not being in crowds, encouraging that in others. As much as we can hold to this point, I think everybody's very motivated to do that. And the numbers will dictate, where this goes. So, but I think I just felt like it was important to emphasize that part. Any other questions for me? All right, so we'll move. Art Simons, man, are you okay? There you are. Okay, because there's a really tight close up there. But you're doing really good with this thing, Art. I gotta hit it to you. All right, Tony, I'm going to throw it back to you and make sure you give us a little room to say some things nice about you at the end.
Yeah, so I'll be short. So thanks for everybody for replying on preferences for the April meeting date. So it's been decided that we will move the meeting in April. Instead of meeting on April 13th, the board will meet on April 6th. So Molly will take that and post that with the with the town, and that'll come out in the notes. This is really a difficult time for us. If I take a look back in December and January, this is on a personal note, December and January, I take a look at what my wife and I had hoped to accomplish in 2020. I would tell you is that we were way off by what we were going to get done and how things have turned out for us. Our daughter moved to San Francisco, so that sort of changed the dynamics of us here in the Northeast, and of course with the changes to the housing market, we've had the opportunity to move out of a house that was really too big for us and for us to move to Orlando and be able to spend more time with our son, which we haven't done for a while. But like I said, this has been difficult as a kid. I had always wanted to live in Connecticut for some reason. When the opportunity came up for us in 1994, I asked my boss, where should I live? And he said, you should live in Madison. And that's possibly because his wife was born in Guilford, but Madison was top on the list. After we were here for about a year, my father commented to me that this was one of the best decisions I had ever made, and he was right. So we have loved our time here in this town, and it's really because we've gotten to work and play with some of the nicest people on the planet. So I really want to thank you all.
So this is a little harder than I thought it would be. Look, I just, because I'm going to have trouble talking, I'm just going to read a short letter that I asked Scott Murphy to read into the Board of Selectmen comments as a part of his liaison report. So Madison Youth and Family Services would like to acknowledge and thank Tony Dolina as he resigns this month as our board chair. Tony served on our board for almost 5 years, the last 3 as chair. Tony's contributions to our board are numerous. He consistently provided insight and leadership to the board while working in lockstep with MYFS during a time of several agency transitions and endless challenges to meet within our community. Tony's personality and skill set were well suited for his time as chair, being very organized and thoughtful throughout, and willing to take the extra time to connect with others outside the board. Tony was never shy to reach out to an elected official or town or school administrator, and did so to help reflect the community's needs for the community's need for MYFS's programs and services. While he was always quick to provide others with accurate, information related to our functioning and our vital role within the community. Tony was involved in other areas as well within the community and his church. He is well known and respected for his dedication to his civic activities and general kindness. From all of us at MYFS, we say thank you and wish him well to him and his wife Ruth as they move from Madison to be closer to their family and friends out of state. They both made Madison just a little bit better while they were here. So with that, Tony, we all say thanks. And I know that so Tony stopped by the office today. We did put together a small care package for him. And so, normally we'd have cookies, so no cookies, but presents. We have gifts that we did manage to get to Tony before he scooted on, at least further down 95 today. Do you have your stuff?
I do, thank you, and I'll open it quickly. In my family, I am generally the least expressive person when it comes to gifts, so don't take this to mean anything other than that I appreciate it.
Tony, I just want to also add my congratulations and my appreciation for everything you've done for the board, for me personally, over the time that you've been on the board. The reason you had such a hard time getting somebody to step up and be the new chair was because you're leaving a very high bar for somebody to rise to, and I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for all of us.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate that. I will try to open these really quickly.
So people can look at you on your screen. What's dangling there is hand sanitizer. So on the bag are these little MYFS hand sanitizers that we do try to hand out whenever we're at an event or promoting things.
I'll have to go quickly because I know it's late. Hat, Madison Youth and Family shirt and hat. Thank you.
Wear that with great pride.
I will as I'm walking around Disney World. Oh, thank you. Madison Christmas ornament. Is that right? Thank you. You can see that.
We didn't want you to forget your roots here.
They used to have such nice pictures up in some of the shops in town of scenes from Madison, and we had a hard time finding one. Oh, there's a very nice picture of from Madison. Thank you. And then I think this is the last one. Oh, thank you. So with great appreciation and gratitude, honoring Madison Youth and Family Service Board Chair Tony Duino, true champion for the health and wellness of the Madison community for his years of leadership and dedication to Madison Youth and Family Service Board and the work of Madison Youth and Family Services. Thank you. This will go on in my office. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I truly appreciate it. It's very, this means a lot to me. So on that note, as my last act as chair, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Good night,
Tony.
everybody.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for everything.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Tony.
Safe travels.
Thanks. Bye.
Safe travel, Tony.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good job, Molly.